The following is a paid program sponsored by Get Elevated. Please be advised that the voices and opinions you hear do not necessarily represent the views of KUNV Las Vegas, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, or the Board of Regents of the Nevada System of Higher Education.
Please note that while we will cover a multitude of topics, including many alleged health benefits, all information provided should be considered anecdotal and informational. Please consult with your physician before adding cannabis to your medical regimen. Cannabis is for adults 21 years of age and older. Also, paid sponsorships are not to be misconstrued as preferred or favored by the host. In any way, they are merely that, paid sponsorships. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Get Elevated. This is your host, Gia Kubik, and I'm here with Ramsey Daddis, the show producer.
Hello all, how you doing?
Good. Ramsey, thanks for being here with me today. So very excited about this first episode of Get Elevated. Let me explain what's going to happen over the next 30 minutes. We're going to talk about who am I? Why is Gia on this show? What is the show about? We're going to talk a bit about my journey to cannabis, maybe your journey with cannabis and how you've helped people. Why the show, who the show is for, what you can expect every week, and what does it really mean to get elevated? So, that being said, let's start with the first part.
That is actually something I was interested in, because getting elevated can mean many things.
It can. And the traditional means is let's get high. And that's not wrong. And there's so much more around getting elevated that we'll talk about and we hope to make the show about. So who's Gia? Let's talk about that. So I am a cannabis leader in the community. I wasn't always. For the past 24 years, I was in medical sales. I was running sales teams for medical devices, pharmaceuticals back in the day. I was with Big Pharma. And then genetic testing was my most recent adventure until I found out that cannabis was an actual job. For 24 years, I was running sales teams across the Midwest. I'm a native Chicagoan, South Side to be specific. Shouts out to the South Side of Chicago. And in that time, in that 24 years, I realized that not once was I really healing anybody, maybe helping someone. And I just felt I was going along. I worked with doctors all over the country. I had seen and experienced every type of physician, and I realized that was not my path. So when I discovered that cannabis was an actual profession, I went straight in, all in. Part of what we talked about in setting up the show, Ramsey, was like, well, who's Gia? Well, I'm a cannabis leader, which is super cool and awesome. And I'm a Reiki master, energy healer. So I have taken a strong affinity to the healing arts and all things Eastern medicine, and also stand-up comedian. So it's kind of an interesting combination. And how that got started was really just a dare about 7 years ago in the city of Chicago. And I learned to do comedy at the toughest club in the city of Chicago. Most people would say it's like learning how to ski at the Swiss Alps.
Whoa.
How about that?
That's exciting.
Yeah. I was like, sure, I'll do it. Stand up. But it was like 3 minutes. And I thought, how hard can that be? Well, 3 minutes of stand up in the toughest club in Chicago is like not even enough. There's not amount of Tito's that can make that feel comfortable. It was difficult and impossible. When I was done, she said, come back. I was like, no, but I kept going back. That was the owner of the club. She's like, yeah, your set was okay, but you have great stage presence. So anyway, I kept going back, and then I made that a little hobby of a career. At the end of the day, I'm nothing and I'm everything. And I'm just someone right now who's really passionate about this journey of cannabis. And I want the whole world to know about it, to love it, to at least try it and find some way that it can enhance their life. So I was literally interviewing someone in Chicago for a position that I had on my sales team. And she was working for, I think, PharmaCann at the time. And I was like, wait a minute. You're selling marijuana. That's what I was like,
got it.
What?
Yeah.
This is the thing. Now, I did not consume cannabis my entire life. And my journey to cannabis is actually hilarious, and I need to share that. And over the course of the show, I want people to know that like all of these stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, are completely welcome, and they're part of the journey to cannabis. So I was interviewing this woman, and when she was talking about the benefits, I was just like, oh my, where have I been? So I started reading. I went on Amazon and I just ordered like every book I could find on cannabis. I was watching YouTube. My friends were like, she's doing it. She's doing it. Because when I set my mind to something, I was like, I'm absolutely doing this. And I discovered this plant, and I was like, I had been shaming it. I thought people in college looked stupid when they were smoking pot. And I was like, I don't want to do that. They just sit around in a cloud of smoke and they just look lazy and they get fat. And I was like, none of that's for me. Not to mention, I thought certainly growing up, my mother had some kind of radar. She would have smelt it, found me, and throttled me to the ground. So I basically,
of course.
I mean, I don't know what your parents' situation was like, but I knew I would have been dead.
Yeah.
If I walked in smelling like anything, there was no chance I was surviving the night.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what's interesting, I was in my 40s and I was in a work situation. I was at a dinner with my colleagues and we weren't best friends. We barely got along. And I was like, just getting through the dinner. I probably drank a whole bottle of wine just over the course of the meal and thought nothing of it. And then one of my colleagues was like, hey, you guys want to go back to my place? I got some weed. And I was like, you know what? Tonight's the night. I have never done that. Tonight's the night. Super bad idea because I had already had some wine. You know, there's rules to this. You don't do it all. You pick one. Mm-hmm. Well, no, I was like, sure, let's do it. So I go to the guy's house and it's like one of these artsy fartsy neighborhoods in Chicago, kind of that grungy. And it was just, the joint came out and they're passing it around. I didn't know what to do. So I was just, oh, I mean, big time. I went hard in the paint. I didn't want to look stupid in front of them. So I'm like, yeah, pass it around 2, 4, 6 times. Bad. I went into the bathroom. Swear to God, I go in the bathroom and I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, my face is melting. Does this actually happen when you smoke pot? I looked at it and I was like, oh my God. And I just felt disconnected from my body. And then I could feel my carotid artery like, poof, poof. And I was like, this is bad. This is bad. And I tried to look at my phone, but then have you ever had a situation like this, Ramsey, where it went awry? Okay, so
I definitely have. Yeah.
So I'm in the bathroom. My face is melting for certain. My carotid artery's banging out of my throat. And I go back out to the group and they're laughing. And again, I didn't really like these people anyway. So I'm like, hey, everybody, I'd like to make an announcement. And they're like, oh my God, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm dying. And they're like, yeah, that was their reaction. Like, rookie. And I'm like, no, I don't think you understand. My heart rate, because I was kind of like medically inclined to know things. And I was like, my heart rate has got to be 200. I'm pretty sure I'm going to stroke out. They're like, you're fine. I'm like, no, I'm not fine. And they kind of shame me, which made it worse. Because now I'm getting paranoid. I don't feel good. I could hear, poof, poof, I could hear it. I know this isn't right. So I insist that the woman drive me to the ER. Ramsey.
Oh no, are you serious?
I totally did it.
Oh my Lord.
Oh my God, and she's from Minnesota. She's like, you're fine. You're fine. She has like, no, listen, I cannot go home. I will die. I will be found alone with my 2 dogs licking my face. I cannot do this. So I go to the ER and it's like 1 a.m, right? The triage guy, he's got to ask the questions and he's like, did you, what's wrong with you? I'm like, come here. Hey.
Yeah.
I'm like, I smoked a lot of marijuana tonight. He's like, okay, ma'am, I'm going to need your information, and he's like, I would need you to go, put the gown on. And so I'm stripping at this point. I'm like, just throwing stuff off. And the janitor's like walking by, like sweeping real slow, like he's like peeking in. I'm like, hey, what's up, buddy?
Nice.
And I'm feeling like I'm at the place of like, I kind of want to enjoy this, but I think I'm going to die. So like, what do I do? Do I enjoy it or do I just like deal with the fact that my death is pending right now?
Of course. Sometimes death happens.
Sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
So the doctor comes in. And again, this is my first time. I didn't even know, should I say it out loud? Are the feds going to come? Like, I don't know. I was so naive. So I tell the doctor, he's like, Mrs. Kubik, have you been consuming any illicit drugs? And I was like, I did. I really did a lot of that marijuana. And he's like trying to explain that, I should. I'm like, no. I got it. Don't save the speech, right?
Yeah.
And they did a whole panel. They thought it was laced with something. It was not. But my heart rate was 180. Mm-hmm. It was legit off the chain.
Oh,
clearly, it was just too much THC. I was just too high. But they kept me in there for like 5 hours. And I was like, am I going to die, doc? He's like, no, Mrs. Kubik, you're not going to die. I'm like, good. So I can actually relax now. And in that moment, I was like, this is really fun. When I knew but can you imagine, like, you don't know that you're not going to die and your body starts flipping out like that. But then those glimmers of knowing that I was safe.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
I was hilarious. And I was enrolling the janitor. I was enrolling the nurses in my jokes. And they were just like, no doubt to this day, somewhere they're still telling that story.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I left at like 4 a.m., tail between my legs, just feeling like, well, there you go. There's my first introduction to the weed, as I called it.
And you know now that you didn't know back then that strain-specific cannabis can affect each person biologically differently.
100%. And too much THC is just too much THC.
Of course.
And you shouldn't. And less is more. And you don't drink a bottle of wine. I think I had a cigarette somewhere in between. I don't smoke. But you know, you get in these places, people just pass stuff around. You're like, yeah, give me that. So after that story, I thought, I'm done. I'm going to put this down. I was embarrassed around my colleagues, and I just thought, you know, that was cool. I just tail between my legs. I'm sure they laughed about me for days and weeks, even though I was like, hey, guys, we're not going to talk about this again. They're like, oh, never. No, we're not going to repeat this
Of course not, Gia.
to everybody in the company. Yeah, whatever. So I had another experience, though, where someone in my circle, just one of my mentors, a higher up VP level in a company, she was like, I want to be her when I grow up, right? Just an amazing woman. And we were going for a spa day. Lovely. Awesome. So we pull into the spa, and she's like, can you go into the glove box? I'm like, sure. She's like, hand me the bag. I hand her the bag. And she pulls out some weed and a bowl. And I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. And I'm like, do I look away? What do I do? Like, is this a private thing? Should I still be here for this? I just felt so naive. And again, I'm in my 40s. I'm grown, and she's older than me. And I think that was the first time I'd even realized that that's something she did. And she packed it, smoked it, passed it to me. I was like, I don't know what, I'm good. I'm good. After like having
of course,
died recently in the ER. Yeah. So, but she did it. And I was like, but we're going to be relaxing in the spa. And she's like, yeah, this is my way to enjoy it even further. And I was like, wow. So I later talked to her about it, and I got to understand another perspective. So this is high-powered corporate person, you know, with the A game on all day, you know, being powerful, and then shutting the mind off and relaxing. And there were a couple more experiences I had with her, you know, non-spa, just like, you know, kicking it on a Saturday night, like, let's just let me try one hit from the bowl, one hit.
Yep.
And then, you know, so in the moments between, like, what am I doing? Am I a bad person? Am I a pothead? And before I got in the industry, right? So this precedes all of that. And then what will my son think if he finds out? What will anybody smell? Just all the paranoia that goes before you actually consume. I realized in those moments, like, I feel good. I feel so good right now. I feel like your body just sinks and you relax. And I was like, I don't feel any stress right now. She taught me that. And then one time later, while I'm just the one hit from the bowl person, she had these drops. And I didn't know what they were. Now I'm realizing they were like a tincture of THC or something, straight, like pure. And she's like, just put a little bit on your tongue. And I was like, okay. And then she's like, oops. I'm like, oh, what do you mean, oops? And I'm like, wiping my tongue. What do you mean, oops? And she's like, oh. And I was like, trying to wipe it off. And then like an hour later, we were eating. And I was like, is this food dry? Is this? And I'm trying to swallow. I'm like, oh God, it's happening again. It's happening again. Only this time I wasn't dying, but my kidneys were definitely shutting down because I was drinking water and I was not going to the bathroom. I was like, I drank a gallon of water. Clearly now my kidneys have shut down and I was unable to swallow.
This is what you're perceiving.
Okay, got it. Totally. I'm like, the good news is, people, I'm not going to die. And she like was laughing, like, she's like, just get into a Zen place. I'm like, Zen? There's no Zen. I can't swallow. I felt like I was like, just like.
My kidneys are dying.
Right. I'm like, my kidneys are failing. I called a friend over. I'm like, I'm sick and she doesn't care. He's like, okay, I'm on my way. And the thing about that, though, that lasted like 5 hours. Those drops were so potent. And in between like the kidneys shutting down and my throat closing, I was really funny. The jokes that came out of my mouth, and they were like falling over laughing. And then I would get sad. And then I would be like, I could feel my body sinking into the floor. And I'd be like, hey, everybody. So it was this like up and down roller coaster. But I'm telling you, brings you back are those glimmers of like, oh my God, I've never been this funny. Like the stuff that's coming out. Because what I realize now about cannabis is it shuts the thinking brain off. You know, Definitely. The brain that's judging you, the brain that's telling you, you know, do this, go there, be this. And it's just like, we're going to shut this down.
All of a sudden, you're always good enough.
Yeah, you're enough. You're loved. You're lovable. You're worthy. You're right. All those things, the critiquing, the judging. So that's why I kept going back. And then when I realized there were medical benefits, it was like, shut it down. I have to work in this industry. And that's when I absolutely pursued. I packed up my Jeep with everything I could fit in my Jeep, and I drove across the country to start a new life in Las Vegas. And I was close to my son. He's in California playing basketball, so the story seemed perfect. And then I got to Las Vegas. I gave up a very safe career. Imagine 24 years.
Highly profitable career too.
But yeah, there is the pay cut. That's it. But it's part of the thing. Like, you think this is the marathon, not the sprint. The train has left the station. And I think that once I realized, like, oh, there's no going back now, right? As one state rolled back after the other, you realize, like, okay, this is really a thing. I'm going to get on board because I believe in it and I'm passionate, and my experiences were up and down, but I'm telling you, in the moments they were up, they were great. They were great, fun and euphoric, all the stuff that when you look on Leafly and they describe a strain, creative, uplifting, euphoric, relaxing, yes, 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 and yes. And when you learn how to consume it properly, as you said earlier, to know that certain strains create certain effects, to understand what you're buying, how to use it, what setting to create. I'm personally one of those people, because in one of my documentaries, I learned that the ancients used to say, let this cannabis be a blessing to my heart. They said it in Sanskrit or whatever the language was. The thing is, I always set that intention because I wanted to make sure that I welcomed the plant and that I used it with intention, because as I was pouring into all those documentaries, all of them would say setting, and intention. And then I realized the times when I didn't have the best experience, I did not take care to have a proper setting, set an intention, and really create the experience.
That makes sense.
So I got to Las Vegas, I unpacked my Jeep, and I was like, what did I just do? Right? I didn't know anybody, Ramsey. I was just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this job. I don't know a single person. I literally was like, dispensaries near me. Let's start there. And then I just, one step in front of the other. And then I became to love the industry, and just love everything about the culture, and I think there's segments to the culture. There's the OG cannabis culture.
Of course.
You know those folks, and I love them dearly. Then there's the people with money, because that's needed, the investors, right? The people. And then there's people like, I think, myself in between, where I've got corporate experience, so I know how to run a business. I know how to do those things. And I also have this extreme, undeniable passion for this plant. Where would you say you fit in on that, Ramsey?
Honestly, probably about the same. I mean, I've owned various cannabis businesses for the last 20 years, starting early in California when it was, first pushed over and dispensaries had just become legal. And basically from there, I was a consultant in Colorado, Arizona, Washington.
All the big states.
Yeah, and I even helped lobby the law to pass here in Nevada through my lobbyist, which actually is now my boss, Jay Matos.
I love that.
Yeah, so...
Yeah. Also a great segue. From the chief lobbyist of Matos Consulting, Jay is spearheading a new bill for consumption lounges. Jay is passionate about alternative places to consume cannabis, so our city and the Strip can remain family-friendly. So that's my journey to cannabis. It's funny, it's rocky, it's bumpy, but it's just full of passion. So why the show, right? How do we get to this point? So as part of the LVMMA, I met Jay Matos. He was speaking about, the lobbying work that he was doing. But what I really liked about him was
what's the LVMMA?
Las Vegas Medical Marijuana Association.
Oh, awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of like where the suits go.
Got it.
And right away I joined the organization and wanted to meet every level of everybody in the community. And when Jay was speaking, yes, he was talking about the business, but he was talking about his passion for sports and helping kids get scholarships. And having, my son got his scholarship, but I was witness to that journey. It's not an easy journey at all. Now, he works more in the baseball realm. But he was so passionate. And I was like, you know what? More children need people like them, because anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But I just was like, I like that guy.
Definitely.
I felt his heart,
Definitely.
So I was like, we got to get coffee. And shortly after that, we met for coffee. And I was like, Jay, can you break down for me the legal structure of Nevada and like just what's going on with cannabis? Because I had heard things. And to this day, he broke that down for me so simply so I could understand, like, this is, the way it was. This is how it's being treated now. This is when with the licensing. I was like, thank you.
Definitely.
And then,
Jay really knows his stuff when it comes to cannabis.
oh my God, he's genius.
Not just in Nevada, but nationwide. It's crazy.
So much respect, and the way he can simplify it, right? Because there's all the
Exactly.
legal ways he could have described it, but he kept it simple. And I walked away and I was like, that's the 101 I exactly wanted from him.
Yep.
And I didn't really give him anything in return. So that was really my benefit to have him for coffee, you know? And I think he even bought the coffee. And then I didn't see or talk to him. It was just like we kept in touch. And then pre-COVID, there was some discussion about this show. And I was like, I'm here, man. Let's talk about it. Because he knew that I did comedy, that I speak and all those things. And I'm just like crazy in love with this plant. And then it was a few months ago, we sat down, and what I really loved and appreciated, he said, you know, Gia, you were on my heart. Mm-hmm. You were on my heart for the show. And that told me that we're aligned in the way that we kind of follow intuition and that feeling. It was beautiful because he just like, you're the one, I want you to do it. And then he really allowed me this opportunity. I consider this work channeled because like the great plant in the sky is working through us now. That's just my philosophy. So complete
you truly
gratitude.
do have a great synergy with this show and with everything that you do in the industry and helping people to educate them. It's a lot of good stuff you're doing.
Thanks, Ramsey. I appreciate it. And I'm really glad that you're here today. This was unexpected that you're here on our first episode, kind of sharing this beginning of our journey together.
Of course, anytime.
So let's talk about the show and who is the show for. The vision for the show, first of all, let's start with that, is that more people globally, I would love for this show to be global, that more people understand they have education, awareness, and access to this plant on a global level. It's my personal mission. So now we have this opportunity to do that. So what this show's not going to be is just about smoking weed and having a fun time. While I do love that, I really want to reach people on a new level so they can understand things that they've had. They need truth and clarity.
Definitely.
Right, Ramsey? That's
Definitely.
what truth and clarity. So in thinking about the guests, I'm thinking about pulling people from just different areas, and whether it's, you know, basics about cannabis, I want to cover hard topics like addiction. I think we have to cover all this stuff, right? We have to cover everything. Alleged medical benefits, and, you know, we have our disclaimer so no one thinks like, she said that, I'm going to do that. But it's more sharing what's available, education, awareness, and access. And so in doing that, I'm creating this theme called Who Better? So every show will have a guest, and it's from my knowing, my research. So who better than insert guest? And
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I have a special story as to why I've projected out the next several shows and really have chosen those guests based on who better than insert that guest. And I really want to share that in each show, like why I chose them. It's very, very special thing for me so that people who are listening can both be engaged in the show. Hopefully will make you laugh. I love telling stories, so there'll be a lot more of that. And this show is a manifestation of passion for cannabis, both from Jay, from yourself, and definitely from me, obviously. So gratitude to Jay for allowing us for this opportunity. Let's talk about who the show is for. If you love weed, this show's for you. Straight up, if you like cannabis, marijuana, Mary Jane, whatever you want to call it. If you love cannabis, that's my preferred way to speak about it, if you love it. If you've ever taken an edible and swore you would never touch this stuff again, this show is definitely for you. Please hear me on that. If you've ever wondered how food can really taste, you think you know how food tastes until you've had cannabis. I don't know if you've ever had that, Ramsey, where you've had cannabis and you've had like tortilla chips.
Well, $20 after at 2 a.m., $20 later from Jack in the Box. I know what food tastes like.
You can really, I thought I knew food, but like salt, I always say like guacamole, tortilla chips, anything with salt, like it just jumps off of it and you just savor it. So munchies are not a bad thing. I mean, they can be. They can be. Yeah. I've cleared out the left side of my closet and like waking up the next morning like, come on, you know better than that. But so for the show is for anyone who's ever said, I'm not touching it again. If you've ever had stress in your life. So one of the little sidebar on stress, in my study of disease, which comes from 25 years in the medical field, I've reached a lot of physicians and I've learned a lot. And stress, inflammation is really what causes all disease. And there's a quote actually from a book I'm reading by a neuroscientist where she says, stress causes disease, cannabis kills stress, like mic drop. Yeah. So if you're someone who's got stress, especially now with all that's going on in our world, this show is definitely something you want to tune into. And if you need better sleep, We always hear about cannabis and sleep. And if you're not getting a good night's sleep, let's talk about that. We're going to have talk about intimacy, how that can be enhanced with sex. I think cannabis is a marriage counselor or relationship counselor. And we're going to have actually maybe a 2 or 3 part series on that, breaking it down, how you can use cannabis to communicate better with your partner, how you can use it in an intimate setting. And
that sounds great.
Yeah. And then if you want more laughter in your life, Ramsey.
Who doesn't want more laughter?
That's what I'm saying. If you need more laughter, this show is for you. If you want to explore topics such as guess the thread count in these sheets, and why I say that is because sometimes when you consume cannabis, you get fixated on the dumbest things, like how many thread count is in this sheet? It's just so soft. Do you think it's 1,200? Do you think it's 400? And the point in all of that is it's so silly. It's what we need. And then you realize you can clean the house, maybe write a book in between and wash your car, and 4 minutes have passed. The sense of time is so upside down with cannabis. It's just the treat of it alone. If you're looking for change, if you want help meditating, let's see, if you want a natural way to manage pain. Pain and sleep
Definitely.
certainly correlate, and inflammation, pain. So we do want to make sure we get medical. If you've ever felt anxious on cannabis, I hear this a lot. I've smoked it. It makes me anxious. This is definitely a show for you, because I have some theories from the things I've learned about cannabis. Well, cannabis is called a God plant. It's one of the many teacher plants in the plant medicine world. And when used properly, you can look at those anxious moments and learn from them. But you just have to be you have to understand how to navigate that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's who the show is for. Some things you can expect, right? Fun and laughter. We're going to enjoy this topic. Every topic that we present, we're going to have fun. We're going to laugh. We're going to be transparent. We're going to keep this interesting. We're going to make sure that we stay relevant and we never get boring, that the topics are new and flowing. And even if it's a topic that's been talked about a million times, like cannabis and sleep, I want to break that down and really explore it on a deeper level. Stories. I love to tell stories. So please expect lots of stories about my experience. Ramsey, anything you have, I always want you to share. I think we should tell stories.
Of course.
Yep. And I'm a spiritual gangster. I love the concept of cannabis and spirituality. What does that mean? Meditation. By no means is this religious, so let's not even go there. But let's think about consciousness, because our final concept is, what does it mean to get elevated? Well, sure, it means getting high. That's why we're calling the show. We get high. More importantly, it's an elevation of consciousness. If we think about what's going on our planet right now, we are elevating our consciousness. You know, there's this talk of 3D to 5D, fifth dimension. Doesn't matter where you are with that. I want to educate you on just some basic concept about elevating the way you think. You can use cannabis to do that, or you can learn something here and still elevate the way you think. How do we do that? We keep an open mind, right? If the topic is not for you, stay tuned. We're going to make it interesting. Even if you're like, well, I don't care about addiction. No. Listen in, because there's an arc of the show here. Like, I'm breaking it down into season 1, season 2, season 3. Season 1, we're going to cover some basics. Like our next show, our first real guest show is going to be Cannabis 101.
Nice.
So we're going to talk about, Ramsey, the 101. What do you need to know about the plant? Some base CBD.
Mm-hmm. Different terpenes.
We got to talk about CBD. People are buying this stuff at gas stations. They're buying it at Home Depot.
Yep.
I just found out that there's so many medications. I bought some CBD tincture from a cannabinoid expert who will be on this show, because my mother has pain and my stepfather has Parkinson's. And you hear all these great things, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I invested in the tinctures, and then I asked the question after, are there any things that this interferes with? And he said anything that has grapefruit interaction. So many medications, you can't eat grapefruit because of the metabolism, etc. I'm not an expert on that.
Got it.
Turns out neither of them can actually take CBD.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
I mean, I'm bummed on many levels, because I know that this could help the Parkinson's and help the pain.
Definitely.
But then with all the medications that they're on, so yeah, but we need to educate people about that. So we're using these medications wisely, right?
Definitely.
Even if they're recreational, we don't want to, hey, mom, take some CBD or take some THC. And then we realize, and a lot of people say, start with 5, start with 10. No. So we want to make it smart. What is the real starting dose? If you want grandma to have some yams at Thanksgiving, or, at Christmas, but you want grandma to not stumble and fall and break her hip, we have to be smart, right?
Definitely.
We are going to push ourselves to learn new things. And I want to make you laugh because at the end of the day, laughter is healing. Laughter is love.
Definitely is, yeah.
Right? You know, we get people to that vibration of love, magic, and miracles, which is 528 hertz, which actually, funny thing, the sound ha, 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 is the sound of 528 hertz, and that is the vibration of love.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yes.
You learn something new every day in this show.
Right? So 528 hertz, if we get people laughing, we open their minds, open their hearts, get them to learn, and if even one person tries something new about cannabis and it elevates their life, then Get Elevated has mission accomplished.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds like a great purpose for a show.
Yeah, thank you, Ramsey. Well, I would like to say that our first episode coming up next week, as I mentioned, is Cannabis 101. I have a very exciting guest. I chose him very, very specifically, and I think you'll see why. But if you think you know cannabis, you're like, oh, I know cannabis, I'll catch the next show. I strongly invite you to catch every show because we're going to go deep and wide. We're going to be transparent, have fun, and all those good things. And I would like to leave with the parting words as I say, welcome to the future of cannabis. My name is Gia. I'll be your tour guide.
You have been listening to a paid program sponsored by Get Elevated. Please be advised that the voices and opinions you heard do not necessarily represent the views of KUNV Las Vegas, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, or the Board of Regents of the Nevada System of Higher Education.